Hi. In today's conversation, I'd like to present three experience-based questions that I've struggled with earlier on in my career when I was thinking of breaking into medical writing. These questions were tricky for me because before I broke into medical writing, I was mostly working by myself, not specifically working in a team, not specifically working in collaboration with a lot of people. And these questions were tricky for me because they all came from the standpoint of how I would conduct myself in a team and what kind of best practices that I would use to collaborate with others. Today, I'd like to present three of those questions and talk about what my responses used to be, why they didn't work, and present alternatives as to how you can respond to those questions if you've been in a similar situation where you're going from working in an academic atmosphere where you've worked mostly by yourself to suddenly being in an industry medical writing atmosphere where the expectation is to work as a critical component in a larger team of people. The first question is, have you ever worked on a slide deck before? This is a tricky question for me because it's one of those questions which can be answered with a yes or a no, and therein lies the trap of the question. Anytime you receive a question that can be answered with a yes or a no, you should know that the right answer is probably not a yes or no answer. It's important to take a step back and to study the question a bit and try and get at what exactly it was asking. Initially, I would just answer by saying, yes, I know how to make a slide deck. But clearly, that answer was insufficient. It wasn't enough. When I did my homework on the medical writing field, I realized that there are many types of slide decks, and these can mainly be divided into branded slide decks and non-branded slide decks. And the kind of experience I had within the academic context was non-branded slide decks. So I would answer the question saying, yes, I have experience in non-branded slide decks, and I have only created these decks mostly by myself using data mining skills and literature review skills and writing skills that was taught to me. However, I am looking for an opportunity to develop both branded and unbranded decks, not only by myself, but also within the context of a collaborative team. The second answer hits upon two important things. First is the fact that I've done my homework on the different types of decks. And the second is that I'm looking forward to an opportunity where I can work on a team. Which brings me to the second question, which is, tell me about your experience working with a team. This again is a tricky question because I had never been a member of a large team before. So it was difficult for me to come up with examples where I was a good contributor in a team. And the way that I was able to handle this was to think about the different collaborative efforts that I was involved in, and to describe how these collaborative efforts were with people who were located in different institutions, different countries, different continents, and how I needed to communicate with these people and be not only the person who is doing the research, but also become the project manager of the project itself and really play two roles. One is the role of a project manager, and the second is the role of a researcher and writer in order to bring these projects to fruition. So that was one way where I was able to answer questions about being a member of a team. The third question, which I've struggled with, is how would you give feedback to someone on your team? And I struggled with this question because, as I mentioned earlier, since I was working mostly by myself, there was no one that I could provide feedback to. So I thought about this question for a while and thought about the best practices on how to provide feedback. And I would just answer the question as honestly as possible. And I would say, although I haven't had a tremendous amount of experience providing feedback to people, here are some ways in which I would provide feedback, such as constructive criticism. Make sure you are not being too harsh on the person. Even if the feedback is harsh, provide a strong rationale as to why you think certain things need to change. Provide a strong rationale as to why you think the feedback needs to change at a foundational level, or why you think a project needs to change at a foundational level. I did some homework on the different levels of feedback. Feedback on style, feedback on tone, feedback on the writing itself, and I would present these different areas of improvement when I was asked this question. So think about these questions. Think about how you would answer questions about teamwork or developing decks or any other document for that matter. Decks was just an example that I used here. Or even providing feedback to others. And think about how you, as someone who used to work on your own, might answer these questions about being a valuable team member. It's definitely possible to answer these questions. All it requires is a little bit of thinking, introspection, and homework. So think about that, and all the best.